Hey everyone, and welcome back to our MJS podcast. So today we have two very special guests. Today we have Dr. Liz Hubbs, LCSW, and Season Flores, LCSW and PMHC. So thank you guys so much for being here with us today. Um, Tell me a little bit about yourselves. This is your first time on the podcast, kind of the work that you've been doing, just a little introduction about yourselves.
Awesome. Thank you, Prisma. Glad to be here. So, as you said, I'm Liz Hubbs. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I have been for about 13 years. I have also a doctorate in leadership, and so I'm really honored to have this opportunity. I am the owner and founder of Modern Jane, and so here I help to oversee our administrative, operational, and clinical services, which is really exciting and certainly really grateful for this opportunity to work with this incredible team. I have been in the field of mental health for almost 20 years in total. I've worked in outpatient settings. I've worked in inpatient psychiatric settings. I've worked with insurance companies. I've provided supervision, education, and now I get to do a little bit of everything and work in this community. So really grateful and excited to be here.
Yes, thank you for being here.
Yes. So I have been in mental health for about 10 years. I got my LCSW about 7 years ago, I suppose. That maths. So I've worked in community mental health and then have been full-time with Modern Jane for about 2 years and have loved it. Almost 3 years. Yeah. Wow. Yes. Wow. And it's just been great to come over here. I am one of the clinical managers and I am a clinical supervisor, do a lot of supervision internally and externally, but then I also get to see clients and work with clients. I do have my PMHC, which is paramental health certification. So I specialize in treating any kind of mental health issue. So perinatal issues in women or postpartum. And so that's something that I'm just super passionate about and have really been thankful to get to do that here.
So. Yeah. Well, you both have plenty of experience in the mental health world in a variety of settings. What inspired both of you to get into mental health and start working in that field?
Yeah, so I just always knew that I wanted to help people. Like I kind of always just knew I wanted to do some sort of counseling or therapy at like it just has always been something I've enjoyed, like just really getting to be a listening ear to other people and just kind of living life with them. And so it took a while to really take shape. I didn't really know what I wanted to do until after I had even graduated college and then moved to New York. And it was there that I really kind of got the opportunity to help others in a way that helped me realize this is what I wanted to do. And so that was really kind of the turning point for me, was just living there and working with people, working with someone who is a social worker and like really just getting that opportunity to see that in motion.
So that's I'm going to shift mine just a tiny bit. I was not sure in undergraduate what I wanted to do. I think by default, I had that propensity kind of in my life of being helpful, kind of having some knowledge, but I don't know that I knew how that translated. And in undergrad, I was like, I'm going to major in business. Nope, made it about one semester. And then I think I might have switched to economics, and it was like, no, that's a hard no. And then I ended up in a psychology class or two. I was like, okay, I like this. So that's how I ended up majoring in psychology. And then similar to Season, really wasn't sure what that would look like. I could say I lived in New York at the time, and I absolutely hated commuting and sitting in an office and things that just, I was like, I don't want to do any of this. And so that's how I think I kind of accidentally fell into working in a social work job. My good friend did. I worked for child welfare up in New York. And my very good friend's older sister was an LCSW and kind of told me what I could do with that degree. And I was like, okay, that sounds good. And so went to get my master's in social work. And I always kind of share this story because although in the back of my head, I know I liked working with people, kind of always was somebody who could talk and listen. I could do both, actually. I could talk a whole lot, which is why I'm on a time restraint. But my very first internship in graduate school was in a state psychiatric hospital in New York City. And day one, I distinctly remember day one, there was a lot of action going on that unit. And I remember they were like, well, they looked at me and they were like, either you're going to stick around and do this or not. And we'll see you when we see you. And I was like, in that moment, I was like, okay, I guess I'm doing this. And I have been working in the field of mental health ever since. And so I, really, really grateful that happened the way that it did and to be here doing this work for sure.
Yeah. So it sounds like both of you kind of knew you wanted to help people in a certain way. You just weren't sure how it was going to play out, right? Liz, yours was kind of, you were just kind of playing it out, seeing what would work best. But now you've fallen in love with it, and Season, you have to as well. Well, and we love, working here at MJS. I think we can all agree that y'all are amazing people and y'all do great work. But going back to kind of the mental health side, so it is September, it's National Suicide Prevention Month. And so during this episode, we wanted to kind of hone in more about that and discuss that. So what are, diving into it, what are some common misconceptions people have about suicide and those who experience suicidal thoughts?
Well, I think we probably both have some knowledge to share there. So I'll hit on a point or two and then I'll pass it on to Season. I would say one of the most commonly misunderstood element is that it is common for people who struggle with depression and even significant anxiety to have thoughts of wanting to harm themselves. That would be like if someone had diabetes and their blood sugar fluctuates. It's a symptom of the illness. And so when we talk about it, when we help give words to people who are suffering with that, it helps it feel like, okay, I can work on this, right? So we want to take some of that fear and stigma away and assume that everyone who may have some of the stereotype that or the misunderstanding of having those thoughts must mean they're going to act on it, which we don't know that until we talk about it, until we help a person. And so being able to create a space where it's okay to talk about it because it's a symptom and it's expected that many individuals in that space can struggle with that. And to help loved ones realize that it's a symptom, that it can be part of the illness. It's, like I said, like in a medical illness, right? Where's an analogy we can look at it? So that's something I think is really important to help people understand is how common it is and how that could take away the fear of hearing it and or the fear of the person being able to share it with someone that they trust, whether it's a professional or a loved one.
No, absolutely. I certainly agree with that. And I think the big thing for me that I really try to tell people, some of my clients, people I'm working with, friends, just because you're having those thoughts doesn't mean we have to go to the hospital, because I think that is often a thought too of like, oh, if I tell someone that I'm thinking this, that I'm having this thought, they're automatically going to send me to a hospital, or that's automatically where I need to go. And that's not reality. There are a lot of different things that come into play when you're looking at that and when you're evaluating whether that is the next step. But there are a whole lot of steps before that. And so I think for me, that's probably one of the biggest is it's okay to share it because it doesn't necessarily mean that it's at that severity.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. And I think, it doesn't help that social media and television shows, movies, they kind of, people watch certain things and they're like, oh, well, if I talk about, wanting to hurt myself or having these thoughts, I'm going to go to a psych hospital, right? We see that a lot. And so that creates that fear that we see a lot in people. So for family members, right? Maybe there's like, what are certain things they should look out for? Maybe they're concerned about a loved one. They're seeing certain things, but they're not sure what they need to look out for. What would you suggest?
I think for family members, for loved ones, for friends, they're going to notice things often a lot sooner than even the person might really notice how. And so I think looking for things like changes in sleep patterns, like sleeping a lot more, changes in overall mood, in wanting to just enjoy, like do things that maybe they used to enjoy, maybe withdrawing, maybe not wanting to do those things. just sometimes just a general sense of apathy, like
Okay.
just kind
Yeah.
of just existing almost, not really
Mm.
walking around and living. And I think if you notice those things, I think it's
Mhm.
okay to say, hey, are you okay? Like, hey,
Mhm.
how are you doing? Hey, are you struggling right now? It's okay to
Mhm.
ask those very
Yeah.
intentional, pointed questions
Mhm.
when you notice things like that. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to add to that, one of the challenges in the space of mental health is fear of saying the wrong thing. And I think
Yes.
as us in this field, I say it all the time. I'm sure Season has over the years, Prism. I'm sure you're finding yourself saying it is, it's okay to talk about it, right? If somebody had a
Mm.
cancer diagnosis, loved ones would be flooding that person's house, fortunately, with support.
Mhm.
How can I help?
Mhm.
Mental health is also an illness, and so when we
Mm.
treat it, and if we can shift how we think about it, and that's beyond us here, right, culturally, that it's okay to talk about it. So like Season said, you see, if you have a loved one or a friend who's missing work, missing school, you've
Mhm.
noticed all of a sudden declining every invitation, or if you live with them, you notice they're not leaving their room, right? Those are points of concern to us that would look like an onset of depression or mood instability. And so to be able to talk about it helps that person be able to talk about it, to say, you
Yeah.
seem like, I'm worried about you. You seem like there's things different, or you seem sad, or you seem this. It's okay to talk about it, to acknowledge it. And or if you have a loved one or friend who's going through it, to reach
Mhm.
out to say, I'm here for you. How can I help? Right. Just like we
Mhm.
would if someone got a medical diagnosis, if
Yeah.
someone was going through a tough time in their life in any other space. Mental health is another tough thing to go through. It's okay to
Mhm.
talk about it. It's not just okay, it's really important.
Mhm.
And when we are coming from a place of love and support, there is no perfect thing to say. And
Mhm.
usually there's not a terrible thing to say either, right?
Yeah.
If we're acknowledging and saying, I'm not sure how to help you, but I'm here for you, that means so much. And so to take the
Mm.
pressure off of, I have to say the right thing or I'm somehow going to make it worse, that's not true, right? Just
Mhm.
imagine it like if we, again, had a loved one going through a medical diagnosis, most of us would be okay reaching out to say, I'm here. Can I help in some way?
Mhm.
Same exact thinking, that when we care and just extend that support and that
Yeah.
person knows they're there, that is really, really meaningful and impactful. And
Mhm.
just to kind of tie that to your last question about suicide and thoughts, that's another misconception, is if I ask about someone wanting to kill themselves, that will give them the
Mm.
idea. And we also know the research has shown it over and over, that's not true either.
Mm.
If the thought's been in their mind, you didn't create it.
Yeah.
And that's our stance professionally, but as a loved one or a friend, it's okay to know that asking it directly is the recommendation. It's not
Oh.
going to give
Okay.
them the idea. It's helping to acknowledge it, which is often going to then create a safe space that they can feel okay actually talking about it. So those are some other kind of to answer both questions a little
Yeah.
bit in terms of misconceptions, and also how can family and friends, what are they looking for, and
Yeah.
also how could we help?
Yeah. And Liz, I really like how you bring it back to like just like if it's a physical illness, right? Just like if it's cancer or something, we would address it as well, right? Like it's just as severe as if it was a physical illness. So I really like how you tie that in. But also, you know, what about parents, right? Parents see their teens or their young adults and they don't know how to approach that conversation, right? Maybe they don't have a close relationship or they don't want their kids to get defensive, right? So, how would you suggest going about that conversation if they're seeing these signs and symptoms so that they won't get defensive, but also, make it a place where they can talk about it?
Well, I can again kick it off and then pass it back to
Mm-hmm.
Season. So similar, as we said in general, but with parents, a few things. It's okay to realize your kid, your teenager could be struggling. It's not a reflection of you, right? Families
Mm,
are systems, and I think
yeah.
for some parents it feels personal, like they've done something wrong. That's typically not going to be the case. I can't say forever because there could be tough stuff that goes on, but in
Yeah.
general, right? In
Mm-hmm.
general, kids go through difficult times just as adults do, and some of that is biological, kind of like we said, medical.
Mm-hmm.
Some kids have a predisposition or have a genetic element that's related to a depression or anxiety
Mm-hmm.
and or ADHD as an example. And so for parents to realize, to help separate themselves, to look at it like, how can I help support my kid? Not, is this a reflection of me? Did I do something wrong, or am I not doing something
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
it's usually a mixture, and it's not anyone's fault per se, right? We don't want to look at it like that. And when we can separate it like that, that helps parents to realize, like, well, how would I seek help? Just like, to bring it back to the medical analogy, I use that so often because I think that helps us give us a framework for what people are more comfortable with in medical or more familiar with. If your kid was struggling with their health physically, probably take them to a doctor, right? And it's okay to say, okay, how else can I get help? How can I support this? And so for parents, helping to realize it's not something I've done wrong, it's not a failure, or it's not something I'm not doing right, we could separate ourselves from that. And the same thing as a parent, when you talk to your kid or acknowledge, kind of like the way we've said, I've noticed you're not wanting to hang out with your friends, or I've noticed you're struggling in school. The kid might get defensive.
Yeah.
That's okay. sometimes having tough conversations are not going to be well received. That doesn't mean it's not the right thing to do, right? And so we often talk about that. They may get defensive because you're bringing up a tough conversation. That's also okay, right? Yeah. Avoiding it is what we want to not do, right? Yeah. We want to avoid avoiding. So it's okay to bring it up. It's okay to say, I'm really worried about you. I'd love to help. I want to help you feel better, right? I want to help you get the help you might need, right? And wording it like that, and realizing it's okay if your kid gets defensive. It's okay if they get frustrated. That does happen. But avoiding it and isn't the better choice, right? That sometimes feels like the easier choice, but it's not the healthier from the longer term thinking.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And avoiding it too isn't going to lead to your kid getting the help that they need, right? Because if we avoid that conversation because of those uncomfortable feelings that are produced in that conversation, then we may not even understand the depth of what's going on. And so I think certainly approaching it with a sense of knowing that they may get defensive, and like, we can't control other people's emotions or their reactions. And so what we can control is us. And so as a parent, walking in and just creating a safe space of like, these are the things I have noticed, right? Very factually, like, I have noticed this change in you. I have noticed this change in you. I've noticed this change in you. Have you noticed them? Right? Like, how are you feeling? Like, what's going on? Can you share with me a little bit about like what's happening in your thoughts and in your mood, and or changes? Have there been any changes at school? And being able just to start a conversation, even if it doesn't start immediately with, are you having suicidal thoughts, right? Like, we may get to that point, but creating a space of just openness and vulnerability. And that starts with a parent being able to model that, I think. And the other thing too is, if you do kind of encounter some defensiveness from your teen or your kid around this topic, like, I would say just go ahead and start taking safety precautions, right? Like, just create a safer space so that, if you don't get to have that conversation, you at least know that there's some safety precautions, safety measures already kind of in place there for them.
Yeah. And I really like how you mentioned just having the open question of, have you noticed these things, right? Because sometimes they might not even notice that they're being withdrawn, they're not hanging out with other people, that they have a low mood, right? So, kind of opening it for them to be like, oh, well, maybe I am doing those things. I really like how you pointed that out. And so let's say the parent does have the conversation, right? They talk to their teen. When do they know, like, they need professional help? Like, do they need to go to the counselor, social worker? Should they reach out to a mental health agency? When should they seek help?
Yeah. I think if you're having that conversation, that's a good indicator that seeking help would be a good next step, right? And so even if it's not long-term help, even if it's, you bring someone in to see a counselor and the counselor is able just to kind of evaluate from a professional stance, that certainly would always be a good next step. Just because as the parent, there's lots of emotions when you feel like your kid is experiencing those kinds of thoughts, and it makes it a little difficult to be more objective. And so if you're having that conversation, moving on to professional help, I think, is a good next step at that point.
Okay. you have anything to add, Liz?
I would just agree, and to help kind of like I've kind of our theme here is to help normalize that, right? Getting help is not because it's a failure of you or because there's something wrong. It means it's recognizing it's okay to get support, right? We're advocates. We would say anybody could benefit from therapy. We all can. It's not doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. It doesn't mean as a parent that you have failed in any way, right? It's I always reframe it like we're fortunate to have services like this in our world and in our community in this instance, and to be able to utilize them just like we would with others is a sign of strength, right? And it's a sign of being willing to say, hey, how can I help with this? How can we help the way I'm communicating with my kid? How can my kid help to learn to process how they're feeling or to navigate some of the stressors at school or in this world, right? So helping to embrace thinking about mental health therapy and or other kinds of support as very okay, really a good thing that anybody can use no matter who you are, where you are, or what's going on in your life. And I think like Season said, when parents can help or a parent can help to role model that or even help to think of it like that, which then helps you to role model like that and then embrace that with your kids, it helps create those opportunities for conversations and to get help earlier in those instances where kids may really be, or anybody, not just kids, but a kid or a teen is really, really struggling. And then just to help, Season, you mentioned like creating a safe space or safety precautions. What we might mean by that could be keeping extra eyes on your kid, right? Making sure the door is open, that you're seeing how they're doing, if they have access to a way to harm themselves, whether that's medication or any other, if you happen to have some kind of weapons in the home. And that could be knives, that could be sharp objects, things that are normalized in our kitchen, razors, things that may be part of your home and you may not ever have considered as a weapon could create could potentially pose a threat. And so that's I don't want to speak for you. That's how I would envision safety ways that you could imagine. How do I help my kid safe if I'm having those concerns? Those are things we typically talk about. But do you want to add anything to that? Okay.
Yeah. And I like how you mentioned the safety precautions as well. So let's say parents are like, well, like, how am I going to hide my knives? Like, like they're in the kitchen, they're everywhere. Like, what would you kind of advise for them with that when they have that concern?
Sure. Yeah. So that's a tough one. And that's a struggle with a lot of parents of like, it feels impossible to be able to create safety with the things that we use every day, right? Like knives or razors or medications. And so it's all about creating a barrier, an extended amount of time for someone that it might be experiencing those suicidal thoughts to like have that thought and then have some sort of roadblock in between them to access whatever, to be able to use that to harm themselves. So even just child locks, like putting them up high, the highest cabinet that you have with a child lock, right? That's two barriers. They have to get up high and then they have to get that child lock off, right? And if they're older, I mean, yes, they're going to be able to get the child lock off, but it also allows that time for them to think logically about that thought and what they're doing, right? Medications, there are lots of different lock boxes that you can get for medications that have a key, and then you can keep the key, or they have a code. They have a safety code that you have to put in, and the parent could set that combination so that the kid doesn't know what that is, right? And then again, keeping that in a separate room, maybe like the parent's bedroom, in the closet, in the lockbox, right? So we're creating all of these different barriers, these steps that someone would have to go through. Razors, especially for females or males that have to shave, right? Like making sure that those are kept in a lockbox or locked away and only pulled out when the teen or whoever is going to go take a shower and needs it, right? And in that moment, it's also about being aware that they're in the shower with the razor and like just kind of being conscious of time and kind of what's happening in that space. So
okay, great. And then follow-up question to that. So the safety precautions were great. What are also things that parents can do at home to make the kid or their teen more, I guess, not as isolated, right? We don't want them to be alone. What can they do at home to, feel like they're doing something, right? Parents might feel like, well, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help. What can they do at home to help?
Yeah. I would say give opportunities, but don't force anything. Because we can't make other people do things, right? And so giving them space, giving them opportunities, making it a welcoming kind of thing, like, hey, we're going here, we'd love for you to come on a walk with us, right? Versus, hey, like, you're always in your room, we never see you. It's all about the language, right? Because if you create a welcoming space of like, I want to spend time with you, I want to hear what's going on, versus more negative language of like, this is what you're doing, that makes a big difference. And I think that goes a long way in allowing a kid or a teen to come out and not isolate and not withdraw, and respecting kind of their desire to have some space to themselves, right? We don't want to just let them have all the space to themselves, especially if they're struggling. But creating a good balance of respecting their autonomy, of wanting some space, and then also trying to pull, okay, that's fine, you can have 10 minutes before dinner, but you have to come out and eat dinner with the family, kind of thing. Creating a back and forth
nice
balance. Balance and boundaries.
I would add too, although this podcast is not about social media and technology right now, we will hopefully do another one on that. But being very aware of your kid and or teen's use of phone, technology, social media, kind of lump it all together, the computer, gaming, right? It is a complex conversation that topic alone will warrant its second podcast. But for the sake of this, as a parent, I would encourage you, I think we would collectively encourage you to be aware of that, manage that. They're not too old. Even if they're in teenagers, they are not too old for you to still be very aware. As a loved one, parent, guardian, grandparent, if you're listening to this, certainly would recommend to either read or listen to The Anxious Generation by Dr. Jonathan Haidt, which really helps to explain things and give some tangible tools. There's a podcast he does, there's videos, there's a lot of ways to take in the information without having to read the whole book. But I think that's a really powerful tool we have to help understand the complexities, to then know, okay, well, what could we do differently? And and how do we help? And so some of the quick takeaways of that, when we think, kind of to circle back to your question, is how do we help keep our kids engaged in the real world and less of just technology, is for you as a parent to be aware of, it's not too far gone. I always want every parent, oh, they're always on their phone. Well, they don't have to be. We could still help, whether they're 14, 16, 17, 18, right? There's 20, if they're living at home, 22, right? There's still ways. Never would want us to think that this is just the way it is. Nothing has to be like that, fortunately. Doesn't mean it's not hard. It doesn't mean that there's not a lot of steps to get there. But if we can embrace that mentality of, we can still encourage and support them to stay active and engaged with us in this real world on activities, right? Like Season shared, inviting them to do things and helping create the plan, and not saying, well, what do you want to do, right? If they're feeling overwhelmed, if they're struggling a bit, that question could seem super overwhelming to them. So to say, hey, let's go and do this, or how about if we came with me here, or kind of intentionally inviting them to go do things, right? And being part of a family activity or event, right? But being aware of, they're never too old for you to be aware of, and to help create healthy boundaries around their use of technology. And when we say that, we mean the phone, computer, games, social media. It's not only social media, it's all of it. And so it's not about erasing it completely. That's not possible. But how do we help create healthy boundaries and parameters within it, in an effort to increase human engagement, social engagement, in-person connection, and how to help minimize some of the potential negatives and harms that can come from that space, and also really heightened use of that space.
So do you think things like, setting a timer on certain apps or gaming would help kind of manage that social media use and gaming use?
Absolutely. I think, look, depending on age of your kids, there's different
Mm,
parameters. And again, I use Dr. Height's reference because I know parents and have different perspectives on this. But in his book through his research, he recommends certain age parameters. And so
yes.
he would suggest not to get your kid a phone and or a smartphone specifically. So a flip phone that can only call or text, that's one thing,
Mm,
but a
mhm.
smartphone that's going to give a kid access to literally everything, as we
Yeah.
all know, he recommends age 16.
Mm,
And so I share that as just a thought to consider, right?
yes.
How as a parent do you get to help guide and shape what kind of
Mhm,
access for your kids? And so that's to come back to your question, Prisma, right? So for younger kids below that age, I really encourage parents to think about the level of boundary setting that you
mm,
have and
yeah.
what your kid does have access to, and how can you embrace that and help
Mhm,
set, like if they have a tablet, right, how do we help
mhm,
set time limits around that are clear,
mhm,
of when they can use that. If your kid does have a smartphone before that age, of course that's your choice as a parent, right? These are
mhm,
recommendations, but how to help lean into that in a way
mhm,
that, okay, how can we manage what apps they're on or how they're using
mhm,
it or when they can use it. Some schools are
mhm,
starting to have restrictions with it, some haven't yet, right? So I
mm,
think realizing as a parent that no matter their age, right, setting some boundaries and parameters
mhm,
around it is going to be really highly suggested and helpful.
mhm.
And kind of I always look at it like a scaffold, right? The
Okay.
older they get, the more independence you would likely want them to
Yeah.
utilize. Because again, the goal as kids are growing is to help them learn how to interact in the real world,
Mhm,
not to do it for them, not to expect them to figure it all out on their own, right? We want to help
mhm,
guide and coach. And so, just like we do with the other kinds of independent living skills,
mhm,
we give kids opportunities to learn how to do it, but we also want to be mindful of, do they
mhm,
have the capacity yet, right? There's reasons we have ages around driving, around alcohol consumption, right? The
mhm,
idea is that developmentally, as kids are growing, they're learning how to make choices. That doesn't mean we ever get it all right. We're all learning and growing.
mhm,
But when we factor that in, it helps us to imagine, well, when am I okay with my kid having access to the internet at any second of the day? When am I
mm,
okay with my kid having access to make choices in social media? Would I be okay? I use this analogy. Would you be okay bringing your kid to a really busy mall like Hamilton Place, or even busier Perimeter down in
mhm,
Atlanta? Would you be okay bringing your 10 or 12-year-old there by themselves? And if you
mm,
would quickly say no, I would encourage you to think about then what might they have access to if
mhm.
they're on the internet at that age, right? Again, just to help us think about it maybe differently, I think
Yeah.
is really great. And use reaching out to some of the tools that exist right now, like I shared with Dr. Height's book, but there's plenty more,
Yeah.
that gives us some knowledge of how do I create some parameters and why does it matter? Why could it be helpful? And also, like I said, that scaffolding ideas that as kids are getting older and they're developmentally reaching milestones, how do we increase that kind of independence and
Mhm.
decision making, but without fully
Pulling it
letting go,
away from
right?
them.
Kind of like
Yes.
Season said, it's a balance. We
Mhm.
want to give
Yeah.
them some opportunity to make decisions,
Mhm.
but we get to decide how much that is still as parents and
Mhm.
loved
Yeah.
ones.
Yes. Mhm.
And and I would just add to, a lot of these things that we are talking about can also be utilized with adults, with
Mm.
friends
Yes.
who are, struggling with these
Mhm.
suicidal thoughts, right? Like um creating the same safe space to come in and just be like, "Hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. We
Mm.
normally talk regularly, like just wanted to check in. Are you okay?" Dropping by and like
Mhm.
trying to check in on them, creating opportunities to invite them. And again, not saying, "What would you like to do?" but really taking the lead in that and saying, "Hey, um, you know, uh, do you want to go get coffee with me?"
Yeah.
Like anything like that.
Mhm.
It can apply to adults, family members, friends, just as much as
Yes.
teens and kids.
Mhm. Yes. Great points. Yeah. And so let's say, there's someone who has a friend or a family member, something that's struggling with their mental health and they don't know anything about it, right? Where can they begin to learn something to where they can kind of, you know, feel like they want to learn more about the topic, but also, try to help them. Where can they begin on the mental health journey and learning about it?
Where can the friend or family member begin?
Yes.
I would say by talking to the person, right, that's experiencing it. I think that's the best place to begin, because it looks different for every person that experiences some sort of mental health. And so asking that person, like, what are you experiencing? What's going on? I would love to learn more how I can help you through these times. So please share with me anything that might be helpful. Those kinds of things. And really just kind of going to the source, right? Going to that person and asking them what they experience and what that's like. There are other resources too, like online, that you could utilize. What I would encourage with that is just making sure that your online resources are coming from the professional world, because I know that there's lots of resources that do have good, good information, but it's hard if you don't already have a knowledge and an understanding of mental health to kind of sift through that and know what is really based on knowledge that we have in the mental health world. So really looking more towards like NAMI and like, what are some others? That's the main one that I encourage people. NHI has a lot of information as well. But both of those, those would be the first places I would look for, or give to family members or friends.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And NAMI is the National Alliance of Mental Illness, I believe. Yeah, so that's a great resource specifically actually for family and loved ones. There's even meetings one can go to. There's tools. Anything else like Season shared that's coming from what we would call like evidence-based knowledge. So how do we know that there's some legitimacy to this information? The reason that is so important is because, as I was already sharing, in the world of technology where you can have access to everything, not all that information is accurate. Not all of it is applicable. So we just have to be really, really mindful of where that information is coming from. So again, if you're a family or a loved one or friend that is wanting to understand, I would definitely agree with Season is helping to learn from the person. Their lived experience is some of the most valuable information you can gain. And also, I would also recommend being able to talk to a professional, right? It's okay to say, you know what, I have this sibling, I have this best friend, my partner is really struggling. I want to be able to learn more how to help them. That is a great conversation to have with a therapist. I'm sure that all of us have had many conversations around that space. So that's another great opportunity. And then as well as seeking some resources and tools online, but just really being mindful of the source of information, just like we would with anything, right? We've known for years not to just Google stuff on WebMD and say, oh, what's happened to what is this rash? What is this symptom, right? What we've learned in that space, we would apply in the mental health space, right? That there is professional resources and tools that are based on knowledge and research and evidence and data that's been collected over the years and studied, right? We want to pull on those same resources. And there's great ones out there, but just really having that as a filter when you're looking to try to understand more, because there is a lot of nuance in the space of mental health, and things are not necessarily really black and white that could be in other fields. And so although we use parameters to help, also having a professional interpretation can really make a big impact. So just having some of those sort of filters on while we're trying to learn and understand, I think are really important.
These were all great points. And then we will link the resources below and more information. But also one last question, just to kind of wrap up. What is one message that you would want every listener to walk away with for this month?
Well, I'll continue with my theme about talking about it, that it's okay to talk about mental health. It's okay to talk about when someone's going through a tough time. It's okay to talk about when people are having thoughts of wanting to harm themselves, right? Now, there's how we handle that, right? We want to bring in the knowledge that we're learning, the lived experience of the person. We want to seek professional help, absolutely. But if the big picture, the elevator pitch speech of that is to talk about it, to acknowledge it, to ask questions of the person, right? That fear of, well, if I don't know what to say, so I won't say anything at all. That's what we want to undo, right? That misconception. And that applies not just here when we're talking about suicide or thoughts of self-harm. That applies to any space of mental health, grief, loss. But if we kind of keep that in as a front pillar of how do we help and what's a takeaway, it's talk about it, ask for help, reach out to a professional to get some guidance and support. That's how we can help our loved ones, and that's how we can help ourselves. If you're here thinking, if you're listening and someone, and you might be the person that's suffering, same thing, that it's okay we want to be, any professional, right, whether it's here at Modern Jane or other professionals, want to be able to help, and we can when we know, and we can talk about it with you. And so that's probably my biggest takeaway, or what I would want people to take away.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And kind of along the same lines, I would really just encourage people to just not pretend like it's not happening, right? I think I've had a lot of conversations with people professionally and just in my personal life of, oh yeah, this has been happening for a long time, and I just pretended like it wasn't happening, right? I would just ignore it. And we don't have to do that, right? We don't have to pretend like we're not having these thoughts, like those thoughts aren't existing. Like really just seek help, right? Whether that is, a natural support like family or friend, go talk to someone, in, more social supports, at work, or if you're a teenager at school, or, if you have religious beliefs at church, like just go talk to someone, get help, because you're not alone. You don't have to be alone. And there are many, many people who want to help. And that's kind of what I would want people to take away.
If I can add one more.
No, yeah, go ahead.
I know Prisma's going to link, but the resources are calling. You can call or text 988, which is a national level, but each state manages it, where you could get immediate help. You can talk to an immediate counselor, and that's for the person individually experiencing it and or a loved one. So those resources exist. You can also call 911. They will come out and help in a mental health emergency, just as they would with a medical. You can go to an ER. So those are some of the big picture tools that exist for people that we want to make sure to share and help spread, to make sure people are aware of those resources. But just to kind of add quickly what you said about it's okay. We call it faking good, right? When you're like, how are you? I'm great, but you're not great. It takes a lot of energy to do that. And we see that and realize that it's okay to talk about. But what I would pose to, again, to come back to the medical analogy, but most of us probably wouldn't wait for our insulin to be at 500 before we go to a doctor. Most of us would probably not wait for our blood. If our blood pressure's been in the 200s over, right, we would probably seek help before that. Mental health is similar. Unfortunately, it is that people sometimes wait until it gets where you can't fake that good anymore, or where it feels too much. We really encourage, whether it's you or a loved one, to get the help far before it feels like that, right? When if your blood sugar is starting to spike, it'd be like, I should probably see a doctor. If you are starting to find yourself feeling really different, or your loved one, right, getting the help sooner, reaching out a little sooner. We really encourage that too, that it doesn't need to be a crisis to get help. It doesn't have to feel unmanageable to get the help. We want to be able to, we want to help, and we encourage you to seek that before it feels at that level.
Absolutely.
Yeah, these were both great points. Thank you guys so much. Anything else that you both want to add to the conversation or to the topic?
Do you have anything?
No, I don't.
Liz?
I think we kind of added it. That's what I added with those tools and the resources and all those pieces, and just that, encourage you to get the help, to talk about the help, to get the help for your loved one. Sorry, one piece that I would add: if you are the friend or the loved one, it's okay to step in. And so Season gave the example of, like, you could say, hey, let's go get coffee, or do you want to go? It's okay to say, I'm picking you up in 5 minutes and we're going and doing this, right? Sometimes we might have to step in a little bit more, and that's also something we would recommend. It's okay to say, hey, I'm going to sit with you. Let's call and make a doctor's appointment. Let's look up a therapist together, right? The reality, especially if we're talking, in the space of suicide, which is often correlated with depression and other mood disorders, the person may not have the energy to look up the therapist. They might, the thought of making that phone call may be the hardest thing. It is okay to do it with them, even to do it for them. We at Modern Jane have that a lot, where a loved one may call and make the first appointment. We're okay. We get that, right? It's kind of like if you felt terrible, if you had the flu and you were sick in bed, you'd probably ask someone to call and make a doctor's appointment for you, right? Imagine that step, that level, that even just the energy to do that could feel like it's too much. So it is not just good, but it is recommended. You could be that support person. And sometimes it's just bridging that first phone call, that first visit. We often say this and we hear a lot, but a lot of times that's the hardest part. And so once someone gets connected, once they come and meet and talk to the therapist or talk to a doctor, doing the rest of it might seem more manageable, right? But being okay, and not just okay, but really willing to help take those first steps with a loved one or a friend, or again, sibling, partner, whomever it might be. We really recommend that. So if you are listening and you're someone who's thinking about that for a loved one, we would highly suggest that it's okay to step in to help out in that way, to help. We say we meet people halfway, but you might have to reach a little bit more. That is okay, and highly recommend it.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, I know it was a heavy topic for today, but switching gears, we're starting to do something where at the end of the session, or at the end of the podcast, we ask a question from the previous person that was here. And so today's question for both of you is, if you could describe Modern Jane with one sentence, what would it be?
I would say that Modern Jane is a place where we truly care about you, from staff to clients to family. Doesn't matter. We care about people. We care about you, and we're here to help.
That was a good sentence.
Great answer. Yes.
How to say the same thing but with different words. It's hard for me to put in one sentence. One, because I'm a wordy person as it is, but also, I've been helping to lead and grow with an incredible team, MJS, for almost 3 years. So it's a lot harder for me to put it into one sentence. But I think if I had to just pick apart the big words, it's access. We want people to be increasing accessibility. We want to help people get in for appointments quickly. We want to help make it easier to make that appointment. That's why you can text or call us or email, right? We want to help make it feel like there's one less barrier to getting in. And so access is one of the key. Access is an ACCSS, not access. And then caring, like Season said, but really, like, we care profoundly about this work. And so that matters. And I think any therapist you might see here, any person you might speak to on our team, I would hope is going to go above and beyond to help in the ways that we can, about you, about a loved one or your family, because we know how important this work is, and how difficult the subject, to experience and to live with mental health. And so encouraging or hoping that kind of trickles out in the work that we do, is that we genuinely care and want to help in whatever ways, and kind of bring what we know. This is I see a building full of social workers. We all happen to have a specialty in mental health, but we also come from that background. So we care about what's going on in your world. We care about your family. We care about what's happening in the school, in your work, in your life outside of here, and how does that all come together? And so I think we bring that mindset. So I know this is not one sentence. This is a compilation of many sentences. But I hope that that's the message that comes from the many sentences, is accessibility, quality care, genuine concern, and support. And like Season said, that matters to us with the people who work here as much as it does with the people who come here or might reach out for services. And I hope that that's what gets felt in the experience
being here,
part of Modern Jane.
Well, thank you both so much, and thank you for all the incredible work that you do. Modern Jane wouldn't be here without both of you. So thank you for coming today and being a part of the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.